My name is Bob Monetti. I'm a retired engineer from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, in the USA. I'm also the past president and representative of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103. I wasn't very interested in the workings of the UN until the past 22 years. It seems clear to me now that a lot of hypocrisy is involved in the workings of the UN. The UN General Assembly established the UN Human Rights Council on 15 March of 2006 in order to replace the previous Commission on Human Rights, which had been heavily criticized for allowing countries with poor human rights records to be members. Things don't seem any better today. Allowing Libya to be involved in the Human Rights Council in any way is a travesty. Libya is a dictatorship which doesn't protect its citizens' human rights and flagrantly murders citizens of other countries. My son was a 20-year-old Syracuse University student studying abroad for a semester in London. Sadly, he was a passenger on Pan Am Flight 103 when it was blown up over Lockerbie, Scotland in December of 1988. He and 269 other innocents perished at Libya's hand. Many of the passengers, like my wreck, were college students. Most were under 24 years old. Finally, in 2001, a Libyan intelligence agent, Megrahi, was convicted by a Scottish court in a trial that was held in an obscure location in the Netherlands. The press coverage, other than the first and last days, was almost non-existent. The trial was long and detailed and sometimes boring, but the damning facts were presented, none of which was refuted by the defense. The verdict was correct. We all understood that Megrahi didn't act alone, and he didn't act on his own, but there wasn't sufficient evidence to indict or convict his superiors. In 2003, Libya finally accepted responsibility for the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 in a letter to the United Nations. Hearing Libya admit responsibility for the bombing and knowing that at least one murderer was in jail in Scotland gave some small consolation and some sort of closure to the victims' families. The compassionate release last year by the Scots and the circus that followed ended all that with a thud. The son of the dictator himself flew his private plane to Scotland to escort the murderer back to Libya, where Qaddafi gave him a hero's welcome. This is the punishment Libya gives to convicted human rights abusers. A French court convicted Libya in 1989 of bombing a French UTA plane over Chad. They admitted giving explosives and weapons to the IRA during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. They had held the Swiss businessmen for over a year and a half that they detained in retaliation for the Swiss treatment of Qaddafi's son for his thuggish behavior in a Swiss hotel. There are many other human rights violations by Qaddafi's regime, but time is short today. I guess a Libyan government official would be able to recognize a human rights abuse, but he would just think that it was business as usual. In March of '89, friends and relatives of the murdered victims formed a group called the Victims of Pan Am Flight 103. This group gave me the job of aviation security, and I worked on aviation security issues for most of the past 22 years. I was the Victims of Pan Am Flight 103 representative in the US FAA Aviation Security Advisory Committee. I served as the only civilian member of the Baseline Working Group, which worked with the Gore Commission. I worked as a consultant to the FAA for 3 years, and I was a member of the US Airports Public Safety and Security Committee. I've attended many aviation seminars, symposia, and meetings, and spoken at several. I witnessed most of the bomb-proof container tests and several of the explosive tests in aircraft. In January of '98, the FAA conducted a test in Mobile, Alabama. They bought an old Lockheed L-1011, filled several luggage containers with unclaimed baggage, and pressurized the plane so that it would appear to be at altitude. In one of the suitcases was a small improvised explosive device. The bomb was similar in size to the one that Megrahi used to blow up Pan Am 103. When the bomb went off, the plane instantly unpeeled and the cockpit fell off. It looked just like the reconstructed Pan Am 103, the Pan Am 747, sorry. Make no mistake, Megrahi was one of the people who planted the bomb on Pan Am 103. He was a high-ranking member of Libyan intelligence. He had 2 passports. The second one was only used once. That was on December 20th and 21st, 1988, to fly in and out of Malta. He had a Swiss bank account of more than $1 million. A piece of the timer found in the wreckage matched the ones that Mebo, a Swiss company, only built for Libyan intelligence. With almost unlimited oil money, Libya financed a 10-year-long, relentless media campaign in the United Kingdom to discredit the trial, the evidence, and the conviction of Megrahi. And mostly it worked. Qaddafi not only kills at will, but he manages to get away with it. While freedom of speech is a right in all democratic countries, it is not a right that Qaddafi gives his own people. As long as Qaddafi sits on all that oil, he can do what he pleases and get away with it. There's no morality in politics. World politics is about business, and in Libya, business is about oil. Why ever would the United Nations let Qaddafi judge other countries' human rights records? Thank you.